Okay, so this video is a video devoted to the notion of a libertarian response to determinism. So determinism essentially says our actions are controlled by forces outside of us. Freedom is an illusion. We think we are making decisions for ourselves. We think that I could have done something other than what I did. We think that, look, you think probably that you could either choose to continue watching this video or not. It's up to you. You feel like if you wanted to turn off the video, you could. And if you continue watching it, you're probably saying to yourself, well, I'm choosing to continue to watch it. That libertarian idea is that, yes, we are in control of our lives. Our products, our decisions are not a product of forces outside of ourselves. Whereas determinism says, no, you don't have any control. If you continue watching this video, it's because that's something that you couldn't help doing. If you stop watching this video, you couldn't have done otherwise. You are always going to stop watching this video. Okay, so now a libertarian response. Let's explore this. So a libertarian disagrees with the idea that you're not in control. And Rachel's describes 4 libertarian arguments against the notion of determinism, against the idea that we are not in control. So what are these arguments? Well, the first argument is the argument from experience. And this seems like a fairly powerful argument in the sense that it's most personal to us. We know it. We feel it. We feel like we are free. At least the vast majority of people. Maybe alcoholics or addicts do not, and they recognize that, look, they're not in control. But generally we think, well, those are addicts. Yeah, those are people that have been corrupted. Those are people whose free will has been destroyed by desires and urges that they've given into and that they can't control any longer. But most of us feel like, no, if I want to go out and have a drink, I can. If I don't want to go out and have a drink, I don't have to. If I want to go watch a game, a sporting event, I can do so. If I don't want to, I don't. That is up to me. And we experience like ourselves having these options. We don't experience ourselves as forced to do something. We may feel pressures to do something. We may feel influence to do something, but we also at the same time feel like, well, I either give in to that pressure or I don't. That's where my choice lies. Maybe my friends are all saying, hey, let's go out, let's party tonight, or let's go to a certain movie. I may feel a lot of pressure from them to do this, but I could either choose to give in to the pressure or I can't. That's what we feel like. We feel pressures, we feel influences, but we don't feel controlled. Now, what is the response to this? Well, the determinist is going to say, yeah, you may feel free, but that doesn't mean that you are free. And one of the most powerful kind of pieces of evidence for the determinist on this point is to look at those neuroscientific experiments where they stimulate parts of the brain and that produces actions in individuals and it produces certain times sensations and feelings and thoughts. And the experiment, the person experimented upon doesn't feel like their action was caused by an electrical stimulation in the brain. And so they give reasons for it. They give explanations for why they chose to perform this action. Even though the neuroscientist could stimulate the same part of the brain, tomorrow the person would do the same action, and yet they might give a different reason for it, a different explanation. So we know we can feel free when in fact our actions are being determined. And so that would be the deterministic response or objection to this argument. Okay, second argument. This is the argument that the universe is not a deterministic system. Materialistic, physical kind of determinism operates on the idea that the physical universe is a series of cause and effect reactions. Kind of like a billiard ball hits another ball, and if we know the force of that ball, the first ball, if we know the angle at which it's going to hit the second ball, then we can predict with absolute certainty where that second ball is going to go. Because it's just a cause and effect event here. And for many scientists, for many years, many centuries, the idea was, well, that's the way the physical universe works. And if we, in fact, are purely physical beings, if our brain is nothing but a set of chemical and electrical reactions, well, then it would seem like we are subject to those same laws of physics. Now, those who argue that the universe is not a deterministic system can argue this on physical grounds, and they can point to quantum mechanics. Now, I am certainly by no means in any way whatsoever an expert in quantum mechanics. But the basic premise of quantum mechanics, and this is what distinguishes it from Newtonian physics, is that where Newtonian physics operates on the strict cause and effect type of environment, quantum mechanics says physical events can be operated according to probabilistic tendencies. So we know, for example, that it is probable that given cause X, outcome Y will occur. But quantum mechanics says in some physical events, and they tend to be very, very small at the quantum level, the atomic level, we don't know for sure, given cause X, if Y will occur. We have a pretty good sense. We might say it's 70% probable, it's 90% probable, but we don't know for sure. We cannot know for sure, according to quantum mechanics, because at that level of the physical universe, there is a certain degree of randomness. And so you can't have complete certainty because it's not purely cause and effect. There's causes, but there's a randomness in terms of whether that cause will produce a certain effect. Now, certain people have taken that to mean, certain defenders of freedom, to say, well, quantum mechanics gives us a reason to believe that perhaps there is this thing called free will that is not determined. Even if we are purely physical, even if our brain is nothing more than a set of chemical and electrical reactions, perhaps quantum mechanics gives us a reason to believe that it is not inevitable that given a certain cause, a certain reaction or a certain conclusion or a certain decision will be reached. But from a deterministic sense, there's a number of really, really serious problems with using quantum mechanics to try to, quote-unquote, prove freedom. One is that randomness does not mean freedom. Randomness is randomness. Freedom connotes the sense that, well, I am choosing to make one decision over another. Randomness says you can't predict what decision you'll make. Someone who cannot predict what decision they will make isn't someone we would consider free. It'd be someone considered out of control. Someone who might be like kind of a schizophrenic or something. Somebody who doesn't know what they will do next is someone we would traditionally consider insane. And so randomness does not seem to be a good basis for the kind of freedom as it is traditionally understood and traditionally experienced. But there's another problem with this theory, using quantum mechanics for freedom. And that's the idea that at a micro, atomic, and even subatomic level, there is a degree of randomness. But on the macro level, it doesn't work that way. The universe operates according to cause and effect laws. And so while it is possible in quantum theory that the billiard ball could hit the second one and nothing occurs, or something completely unexpected occurs, at the macro level, that never, at least at an observable level, happens. At a macro level, there's just too many forces, material, particles in play for randomness to take control. And so we are certainly a macro being, and so thinking that our existence is going to operate according to randomness does not seem very plausible. A third argument. Now, this is a very, very kind of fascinating argument. This is an argument that has been used by a philosophy called existentialism. Read Dostoevsky's The Irrational Man as an example of this argument. And this is the argument that we cannot predict our decisions. And so the idea here would be, look, if determinism is true, theoretically, if we knew everything about the causal system around us, everything about the effects that are preceding us, we could predict an outcome. We could predict our decision, what we're going to do in the future. The case for freedom is really interesting here. It says, okay, if I knew for sure that, according to this kind of deterministic system, that tomorrow you were going to wake up and you were going to watch, I don't know, a movie about a romantic comedy, right? So my deterministic system says tomorrow at 10:32 p.m., you are going to sit down with your boyfriend or girlfriend and you are going to watch a romantic comedy. But if I knew that in advance, it would seem like, well, I could just choose differently. I would just choose to do something different just to prove that I'm free. And so whatever the future prediction is, it would seem like I could do other. If I knew that information in advance, if I knew what the prediction was, I could choose differently. It seems like a pretty intriguing basis for freedom. Now, there's two ways you can look at this, and kind of from a deterministic response. The deterministic might say, well, it may appear to you like you could choose differently, but if someone, an independent observer, again, knew every kind of influence that was going into your decision, they would know that you had heard about this future prediction. And this outside observer would know for sure whether you would go through with that decision or not. The outside observer would know for sure whether or not you're going to try to prove your freedom by rejecting the decision or whether you're going to simply go along with the decision. But in either case, you really don't have a choice. You really cannot do something other than what you were predetermined to do. All right, so that's the kind of the third one here. It's again a really fascinating one. The fourth one, the argument from accountability. This idea here, and it goes back to the Richard Loeb or Richard Leopold and Nathan Loeb. And the idea here is that we feel accountable. We assign praise to people. We assign blame to people. We say, you did a good job. You didn't cheat, or you were bad. You violated this rule. You didn't do your homework. You got somebody else to do your discussion boards for you. And we seem to say, well, you did something that was wrong. You did something that you shouldn't have done. But this idea of praise and blame only makes sense if you could have done otherwise. I mean, there's no point in praising someone who's done something good if they couldn't have done otherwise. And again, it goes back to Clarence Darrow's defense of Leopold and Loeb. We shouldn't critique criminals. We shouldn't think of them as bad people. We shouldn't think of them as making poor choices because, again, they couldn't have chosen otherwise. So the libertarian argument is, well, we use these concepts. We feel like these concepts are valid, so therefore they must be valid. The deterministic response is, well, just because we use them and just because we feel like they're valid doesn't mean that they are. That's part of the illusion. That's part of the illusion where we feel like we're free and we're really not. Okay, so those are four arguments for freedom, and as well as their deterministic responses, and it's up to you to determine whether or not you think any of these arguments are really strong arguments in favor of freedom, or whether you come down on the side of determinism and say, no, in fact, freedom is an illusion, and we are not in control of ourselves.